Welcome, beautiful divine masculine and feminine darlings. This is the Seraphim Gem Gypsy, SeraFae Indigo Empress, and Shiloh Horizon. I don't plan to be here for too long. But while I was just finishing up a couple of tasks, I suddenly picked up another solar plexus attack. It wasn't just the solar plexus, but it started there, and this was from a group of cult witches trying to do power of 3 spells. Now, I picked this up, I picked this up while I had my hands full. I wasn't actually planning to come here right now. This was an off-the-cuff reading because of their choice to attack. And as I felt my stomach drop, and I picked up where this was coming from, I looked up at the clock, and it happened to be turning from 5 p.m. to 5:01. Not always, but often when these cult people get together, not just, but especially in cases where you have people in different states, maybe you've had people, let's say in Maine, that started in Maine, and then some of them moved to Colorado, and some of them moved to wherever they moved. But you have people in different either time locations or different states, or even just in different homes, whether they're in the same time location and state or town or not, they all decide whether they're in a group doing this together in a room or whether they're separate. Okay, 5 o'clock on the dot, that's when we'll start doing our chants all at once, wherever each of us are. Make sure you start chanting at that time, so we'll all be chanting our black magic at the same time. It's kind of like a reverse group meditation, except they're trying to do group black magic through this process. And frankly, I just had a chat with my doctors, both of them today, including trauma specialists, about what you've been doing and about the magic that I know you've been spinning. They know I'm not crazy. They know what I'm talking about, but they know that you have problems and that you need help. Or a prison cell. That includes also a physical doctor, a MD, and a DO as well, in fact. So that's not very smart of you. Secondarily, because I'm picking up a karmic saying, oh, I'm a trauma specialist. Yeah, actually, because I go in not for talk therapy, not regular therapy. I go in for something called EMDR therapy, which is what is actually recommended to soldiers who come back from the war with this type of trauma. Why? Because when you deal with this type of trauma, it causes injury and breakdown in specific centers of the brain, the hippocampus, the prefrontal cortex, and the amygdala largely. And previously it was thought that whether it be a concussion, which is very similar actually to this trauma, over time, the abuse and the shrinkage in those centers of the brain has pretty identical symptoms to concussion, including nausea for a number of people, and myself included, when that came up. Just like you need more sleep to heal those neurons and recover after a concussion, just like you get nauseous, same thing with this degree of trauma. Why? Because it's actually causing damage in the brain over time. So it's a personal injury and it's a suable offense, right? These combative karmics thought that they were going to do something and Regina George their way to the top, except for that might have worked for them in high school. Maybe they got a slap on the wrist, or maybe they didn't at all because whatever reason, small towns, whatever, popular kids, whatever it was. But it's not high school, and we're not talking about slaps on the wrist or detention. These are personal injury lawsuits and, well, jailable crimes. This is violence. And so was their attempt to silence the truth. It was also an amendment right violation, simply put. But either way, God saw that, and so did I. So subsequently, to heal and regenerate those neurons, you use a machine. Right? I don't just go in and talk. I don't just talk. I could do that with anybody. That's called talk therapy. I'd do that with myself and the cats if I wanted. Have you ever seen Grace and Frankie? It's like video logging. In this particular episode, Frankie, I believe, tells Grace that she should just set up her phone and talk to herself or vent and whatever. And sometimes just while saying things out loud, right? You need a smart person to have a conversation with sometimes. In fact, I just got done talking to my doctor and saying that I'm so sick of having to dumb myself down around these people just to be heard and understood on their level. I don't have to do that with my doctors. I can speak to them on a peer-to-peer level. What does that tell you, karmics, locals? Okay, I outrank you. Somebody asks, what do I mean by peer-to-peer level? I mean that usually if you go to a doctor, they have to explain to you in human civilian terms all of the medical jargon, kind of like a lawyer. That's why people hire lawyers, to help them understand all of the legal jargon, all of the information and words and diagnostics they don't understand. Yeah, well, they don't have to do that with me because I'm so versed in this that they can say something and I know what they mean, or I can say something in the language that they would be speaking and be heard. I don't have to dumb myself down to be heard and understood by them because I can speak to them on their level with their words and language. Thank you. And I do. In fact, I often impress lawyers by doing the same. Not on purpose, it's just I talk and I know what I'm talking about. So as far as the, karmic says, well, you sound all on. Yeah, it takes a couple of days for that machine and its work to kick in. There is some effect pretty quickly for some people, myself included, but it takes a few days to settle and for the processing to move through, medically speaking. And so you go in and it's not talk therapy. That's one type of therapy. However, and also let me shuffle cards while I'm here and light some sage. Just like the Grace and Frankie reference, sometimes you say the things you need to hear, soliloquy style. But in this case, that's not why I'm going there. I don't need that. It's not the talk therapy I need. I understand these things. What I need is physical healing. It would be like getting a big cut and that needs stitches and then just expecting it to stop bleeding on its own and expecting it to stitch itself up magically with a snap of your fingers. That's not how that works. No, it's not. But the wound is where the light enters. So I go in and I sit with a machine, and the machine sends signals. The doctor regulates the machine, and the machine sends signals through my palms, the left and the right, then the left, then the right, then the left and the right. It's like holding two cell phones in each palm, except they buzz alternately. Zzz, 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 zzz. And so it sends the signals back and forth through your brain while you are processing out whatever things, trauma, issues, stuff happened. And what the machine does is it stimulates the rebuilding, or it stimulates the building of new neurons. So imagine you have different sections or hemispheres, or even just compartments of your brain, even just the same section of the brain. Let's say you've got one center of the brain here and their communication ends here and their communication ends here. But when you've dealt with trauma or abuse or even concussions, or I mean, I've met people with Lyme disease that have dealt with breakdown from the parasite to the point where their neurological stuff is affected, even hormonally too, but especially neurological. And what I found, based on observation, interestingly enough, is that trauma, people with this level of combat trauma, people with concussions, and then also people with Lyme disease that are dealing with the neurological effects, they all experience very similar symptoms. It's quite interesting how the body reacts this way. But whether it's a parasite latching onto somebody as in tick form. I mean, it's not the tick that is the disease. It's that some ticks carry disease. It's the Lyme virus or the Lyme parasite that some ticks carry that makes people sick. So whether it's you've got people abusing you, which is parasitic, or you've got an actual tick stuck to your butt cheek, which is also parasitic, or any crossover in between, the energy, darlings, the concussion, right? Especially if it's based on violence, yeah, also very parasitic. Even energetically speaking, it's the person who's injured who has to take the time and energy to deal with that and recover, often tired, right? In recovery, having to deal with that. So, energy vampirism. You see the core foundation of that lesson and the theft, it is the same. And often, interestingly enough, I think unsurprisingly not given the first reference, so are the symptoms commonly. Somebody says, how do you know this? Because I have been abused into qualifying for, I've been abused into veteran combat level trauma. In fact, more trauma than most veterans come home with. But you know, I've also been put through more years of abuse than your average veteran goes through in that type of environment, more combat than an average veteran goes through. And I didn't have the training or qualification like they get before going off to war to do it. My safe, peaceful environment was attacked. I had to build trenches around myself or was put in them through the process. Had no training, had no support, had no help, had to figure it out on my own and train myself with God. You see? And this is another piece of it. A soldier willingly chooses to go to battle and signs their name for 4 years at a time. I didn't do that, and I've been put through it for over 8. So yeah, worse trauma than your average veteran comes home with. But you see, the treatment is the same, darlings. You get them out of those hostile environments and you give them the peace and the support that they need. Thank you. In fact, it's pretty commonly seen that the second you start removing the tension points in a victim's life, or the attack points or the attackers, and they can re-regulate, or the support and healing tools or what have you are starting to be provided, the change and transition from that target are night and day. Once you start removing the abuse and the abusers, the shift in that light worker is almost immediate. Their mood shifts, their sleep almost immediately gets better. It's almost instantaneous, and it continues to progress. And this is why this is important, and this is why they're in trouble. These are personal injury lawsuits. And I think these people are, in fact, I hear it. They think that I'm just running my mouth. They think there's no credibility to this, if not in general, because they don't understand the laws, then because they think they're above them, or because they've not been arrested yet. But yet doesn't mean at all. See, they celebrated too soon. They gambled poorly. You gotta know when to hold 'em, and know when to fold them, and know when to walk away. You better never count your money while you're sitting at my table. Now there's no time for counting, 'cause your deal is done. Hey, Oka, Sacred Clown, you don't like that back, do you? I also redid my nails. I know exactly which karmic's planning to try to stir the pot again, or has been lurking. Octopus witch. Every journey starts with a single step. Octopus witch. Got you, Ursula. As fate would have it, that's not going to fly. And I know you thought you were stopping something, but every journey starts with a single step. Every adventure starts with a single step. And darling, I'm already on mine. You stopped nothing. But that's the truth. The hard, sharp, cold sword of the truth. Don't choke on it. Wishful thinking you had. Unwise, though. And you're out of luck because, well, darling, it's mine. And your little aggressive, angry Queen of Hearts bullshit. Yeah, you little snakes. See that Queen of Hearts over here? Sitting on her throne. Off with their heads! Ah! 16. No, you first. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? Ha! I'll hit it from an umami angle. And I'll make calamari out of you. I'll make octomari out of you. Didn't you know octopus is even more tender than squid? Squid's a bit chewier. If it's done right. Joke's on you, boo. Squishy. Soft. Easy to defeat. Easy to dice up for calamari with a sword of truth. Free bird. Butterfly. Okay. And so as far as the neurons go, let's say you've got, whether it be a section of the brain or over here, and then a section of the brain over here, or maybe one section, and you've got a piece that's trying to communicate with the other side of it over here. But when you've got that trauma or those injuries, whether it be concussion, whether it be neurological injury from Lyme, or in my case, the trauma abuse, the repetitious battery, there's supposed to be a bridge in between that connects them. Those are the neurons. All right? Except for when you're dealing, it's giving Joan of Arc. It's giving the Loire River in France. The Loire. There's one end here and one end here, and the bridge was supposed to be in the middle, but somebody destroyed it. So how do these ends properly cross and communicate? See, they can't, and that's where you have trauma symptoms. And that's when you go to work with this machine. I don't go to therapy because I'm broken and I'm fucked up. No, bitch, I'm getting a medical intervention. I need a doctor to use this tool to help recover from the physical injuries that have been caused. And also, I've had an MRI scan, and so I can prove this. It's not my word against theirs. I'm about to put these people in jail and then bankrupt them a couple of times over and into the next life, and then some. And then I'll be doing it twice. Once for me and once for my girl. And then I've got some other bones to pick because some of these people are also involved with bullying and murdering my husband. And I take personal offense to that too. So they will take accountability for all of this, legally and otherwise. But you see, that is why I use that machine. And you will not shame people for getting medical intervention when you should be ashamed of causing injury to the point where they need it. Eat that karma hearty. I know why you're mad that Mercury retrograde and the Saturn return we're in, which I actually also just had chats with my doctors about today. Yeah, it's kicking your asses, isn't it? I warned you a few weeks ago before it hit. I felt the shadow period coming. Make a wish. Oh, what did I say, girl? Free bird. Free bird. And there you go. The sword of truth. Free bird. Make a wish. I wish for all these karmics to go away. I wish for divine justice and providence now. I wish for all hostages to go free. I wish for healing and protection for everybody. I wish that all of these criminals who belong in jail go there. I wish for God to take the people off of the earth who are doing nothing but sucking it dry and hurting people. I wish for peace and justice. Connection with animals. I wish for all of these plagiarizers to be caught immediately, and I also wish for any support that they were getting, especially off of stolen content and what have you, to immediately backfire now. Heard that, and it is. You know why? That's why the solar plexus attacks earlier. Now you've got this. I heard that crazy. Oh, you're realizing you picked the wrong one. I didn't realize I was coming up against a real battle angel. Yeah, it's not a character role for me, girl. It's my real life. The fraudulent. And you're finished. Frankly, legally and otherwise. Which I also just had chats with the doctors about. Ooh, you look so dumb right now. And I warned you you'd fall down. Water element. They're crying now. Being forced to have this reality check now. Also, this is my light workers coming out of their shell and honoring their emotions. Pause and reflect. Yep. See, they thought since they were getting away with things for some time that, look, I'm picking up a few things. This for a split second looks like the Quidditch thingy in Harry Potter from a distance. This looks like also a cherry blossom tree potentially. I've had people tell me that that reminds them of me. Also passion flowers. The moon is here, but the moon is covered in dragonflies. One of my ancestors comes through in dragonfly form. And then you've got this, I love the strings, but it's giving tiny violin for these karmics. They thought that they were getting away with things, or they had gotten away with things because the consequences hadn't hit them already. Like, let's say somebody's not been arrested for the crimes that they've been committed yet, and so they think that they'll forever get away with them, or they think that nobody knows what they've done, or the paperwork's not being drawn up to apprehend them. And it's stupid. I've seen criminals get nabbed for crimes years after. In fact, I feel like some of that's part of their karma. It's like the second they let their guard down and they think they're clean, that's when it comes to hit them. Not always, but yeah, I'd say that's an extra bit of karma for them. Knocks them upside the head the way they tried to do to others. But I've seen people get nabbed years later, 5, 6, 7 years later after they committed a crime, when they thought it would never be addressed, they'd never be caught up with it. But in these cases, like, there were investigations that went on sometimes for years. Sometimes even the witnesses or people that were wearing wires. I've seen this in police tasks. By the time the police were ready to arrest all the people involved, by the time they felt like they had enough evidence to make sure that the criminals they were going for could not slip through the cracks, when they did prosecute them finally, some of the witnesses and the people who had done wire buys, like worn wires on these criminals, they were dead, probably from overdose, I assume, or something. Not possibly gang crimes, because they were in that. But all these years later, years and years after these people think they're getting away with things, suddenly it all comes back to them. And a karmic is asking, well, why? Like, why would they wait so long? I just told you. One, they need to make sure they have enough evidence to properly prosecute, so there's no way that these criminals can slip through the cracks, because then there's something called double jeopardy and they can't go and re-prosecute them for those crimes. So they want to make sure that they get enough evidence to properly press charges on this person the first time and get it done right, and they do. But sometimes it takes a while, especially when they have, it's not great for victims in the process, but it does happen. Especially when they're trying to get a group or a conglomerate of people, or people who are committing some kind of organized crime. I've seen lower level drug dealers wear wires on people buying drugs, and also people selling drugs to get themselves out of trouble. Or I've seen situations from the outside looking in where the people who were involved, even if it was just like middleman connecting a drug dealer to a salesman, or somebody who wanted substances to a dealer or something, there's a person that was wearing a wire. True story, bro. I saw this years ago. I saw this happen to someone else. One day they get a knock on their door. Actually, they were visiting their mom. They got a knock on their mother's door, in fact. And they got arrested for what was it? Connecting two people. There was somebody who wanted drugs and there was somebody who was selling drugs, and there were people in the middle, and the person who was connecting the drug user to the dealer, that person got a knock at the door years later. And it's not just for drug crimes that they do this. It's for any kind of crime. And what I would say is probably the cops felt like they had enough evidence to get the dealers at that point. So then they were ready to get all the other people, the people who were buying, the people who were middlemaning, etc. And that's when they did. They started doing a big wide bust. But they waited until they could get the bigger drug dealers, I would say, first. And the person who I saw get a knock on the door, that was the middleman. All right, I saw this happen to somebody a long time ago. But my point is, that doesn't matter. Well, I got away with it for a while, must be free and clear. No, karma misses no beats and no deadlines, and that's not how the law works, in fact. Also, I hear statute of limitations. Yeah, that doesn't apply to a lot of crimes, first of all. Second of all, the usage does not a lot of them. I mean, some, yes. But if you would stop interrupting and let me finish my sentence because you think you know everything when you don't, the laws that it does apply to in a number of these cases, because of the level of crime or the specific details of these particular cases, or the attempts to cover them up for so long or hinder prosecution for so long, that actually creates a loophole for victims to be able to, like myself, to be able to go in and backtrack and press charges, and it dismisses the statute of limitations because it shows, well, a few things. One, in some cases, the statute of limitations doesn't start. Like, if somebody's sexually assaulted, the statute of limitations doesn't start when they were sexually assaulted. It starts when they realized it, if that's how that works, and that sometimes is the case. But there are also specific stipulations and loopholes in some cases where if a criminal is trying to burn out the system, it's called bulking the system, like in a baseball game. Drag it out, waste time so that they can, let's say there's a 5-year statute of limitations on if they can have a crime pressed against them. And they try to push the system back, so it takes 6 years for them to finally go through court. They think, well, statute of limitations up. No. If you were doing things to cause confusion in the system to time out the clock, hoping that if nobody had been able to properly get justice in that time, that you were deliberately doing more illegal things to keep them from getting justice, then you wouldn't have to pay for it. No. Now that creates a loophole. You go back and you get charged for, they go back and they charge you for whatever you did that you thought you were going to drag out the system to time out your charges through statute of limitations. And then you get charged with tampering with investigations or hindering and apprehending prosecution. Stupid. 2922. You don't know what you're talking about. But I do. Somebody asked, how do you know that? How many conversations do you think that I've had with lawyers over the last 10 years? Plenty. Quite a few. Thank you very much. I'm also very smart. Yeah, angels of abundance. So these people are taking losses. Oh, look. Okay. Anyway. She knows what she's talking about. You're scared now, huh? Oh, I thought she was alone. Yeah, except for the team of angels around me. Spooked, huh? Look, there's divine masculine. Dance with life. You know, it's so funny. I just heard, you don't know my name, know my name. awakening. I'm also about to go stretch and dance for a while too. Yeah, I was just picking up at some of these people who thought they were magical and could do spell work, and they're realizing that they can't. They're not the teachers or the prophets or the practitioners that they claimed to be. They were copying from me in this case. Lean on me. They have no support. They do not have divine support. They do not have resilience. You know why they're scared? As fate would have it, yeah, you're not supposed to do that. You were not supposed to try to snatch someone else's blessing. You wanted God to be on your side. You claimed that, but it was because you were being egoic and arrogant. You know, I've been picking up also that these karmics who decided to combat me, for example, part of their karma is to be humiliated and humbled and get their ego placed in check. Now, that is what they thought they were going to do to me, because they felt like I was being cocky because I'm confident in what I say and who I am, because I work with the divine and have done so every single day to know who I am and honor the divine. But they don't do that. So no, you're trying to knock what? My God confidence? How do you think God's going to feel about that? You're in line for an ego check though. Honey, little hood rat, salty little peanut. Yeah, because the scales are being balanced and situations are being alchemized. They don't have any kind of flow. I'm about to go free flow. In fact, it's my favorite way to dance. I can choreograph. I don't like to. Generally, my favorite is free flow. Lean on me. Same thing with my music. Often when I'm picking music for dancing, if I post videos with music on it, I didn't pick the music. It was whatever was on Pandora, and I happened just to be able to vibe to it in that moment. It was a jam. Sometimes I don't even know the songs. If it's a good beat, I will match it. I did that the other day, actually. I did a live feed where I was just dancing. I don't even think it's up. It's not up. I think I may have posted it for a second just to get a setting to shift around. I had to open the comment section for myself, which you can't do if the video is private. But then I took it down immediately. Just kind of was hanging out with myself the other day. You didn't know that. Karmics? Why do you have to be so good? Yeah, see, I think that's funny. There's a karmic who was trying to nitpick a couple of my stuff with the nails last night, but I wouldn't have left them that way if I'd had acetone, which I did pick up today, or where was it? It's the tools that I needed, which I didn't have till today. It's just weird. Oh, I didn't realize you were gonna problem solve. You don't know anything. Stop assuming. Asking all them questions. Assuming? Stupid. Where? With who? If you know, you know. In fact, let's pull it up. Because you look stupid. See if I can find that on YouTube. Google's not wanting to pull it up. What is it called? Asking all them questions? There it is.
Listen, bro. I understand what you're saying, but I'ma help them understand what you're saying. Basically, this how the girl be. Where? Who? You been where? Where who? For real. Oh, really? That's how you feel. And the guys be like, asking all them questions. Asking all them questions. Why you asking all them questions? Making statements. Asking all them questions. Asking all them questions. Why
Assuming. Stupid. You look dumb. So anyway, I think that's about all I have to say to that. More specifically, that's all the energy I would like to devote to that. I'm snatching mine back now, running through a nice spiritual bath and going to finish my business. Toodles.